Let's bring in another analyst on this, somebody who will provide us some real insight on what we see going on at present. Maha Yahya is the director of the Malcolm H. Kerr Carnegie Middle East Center. Thank you for joining us. This past 24 hours, really very concerning. We don't know who was behind the twin blasts in Iran, which Iranian officials are calling a terror attack. It's been very worrying in the past 24 hours in the region, of course, with the attack in Beirut and now this major attack in Kerman in Iran. Are we the closest we've been to a major regional war, as close as we've ever been since October the 7th at this point, do you think?
Good morning, Becky. Thank you for having me. Yes, I think we're inching closer and closer to a major regional escalation, which will not remain regional, unfortunately. If things get any worse, they could easily drag in the United States and others into this conflict. Until now, I mean, we have to wait and see what Hassan Nasrallah has to say at 6 p.m., Hezbollah's Secretary General. But until now, my sense is that Hezbollah will likely raise the ante in terms of, in rhetorical terms. They will need to respond to the assassination, which is the first kind of direct attack in Beirut's southern suburbs since the 2006 war between Hezbollah and Israel, but also maintain the nature of that attack in a way that would escape or not drag Lebanon into a regional confrontation, which is likely to destroy a country that's already collapsing. In terms of the attack, in terms of the attack in Tehran, and in Qamran, it's interesting. It's as you said, it's not clear who's behind the attack, but it's interesting that in July, the Revolutionary Guards had announced the capture of a cell, and they said that this cell was financed by the Mossad and that they were on their way to blow up Qasem Soleimani's tomb. So again, for this to happen today in Iran is, I think, a major security breach for the Iranians. We'll have to wait and see how this is going to play out.
You rightly pointed out that Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah was speaking in less than 2 hours. He was scheduled to speak about Soleimani as this is the 4th anniversary of his death. And you have suggested that we should watch to see how Hezbollah calibrate their response. Let's remind ourselves that since October the 7th, we've heard at least 2 major speeches by Hassan Nasrallah. And although in both throwing an awful lot of Hezbollah's weight behind support for the Palestinians in Gaza and warning Israel, if it didn't stop its assault on Gaza, this thing would escalate. Warning, but actually those threats not really becoming anything overtly aggressive on the ground, and to all intents and purposes, many describing Hezbollah's response to Israel's war on Gaza as muted. And you've also seen Iran sort of step back physically, as it were, from the breach, although we've seen this proxy support in the guise of the Houthis exercising their assaults from Yemen. I just wonder what specifically we should be watching out for today. I mean, how do you believe Hassan Nasrallah will calibrate this response?
I think they will need to respond in one way or another, particularly because of where the attack happened, because it happened in the southern suburbs. And what's the use of the deterrence that's been in place since 2006, which basically equated you attack, I don't know, Saida, we will attack Haifa, you attack Beirut, we will attack Tel Aviv, this kind of city for city, citizen for citizen deterrence that's been in place since 2006. And actually, I mean, there have been no security incidents almost along the border or along the Lebanese-Israeli border since then. It's worked since then. So my expectation is that, as I said, they will increase the rhetoric. Most likely there will be some sort of a response, but it will not be the kind of response that will trigger an all-out conflict, in a sense that Israel will feel the need to kind of bomb even more targets within Beirut itself. Let's not forget it's been bombing a significant amount of targets in the southern Lebanon predominantly, but also in Syria. The border area in Lebanon, 70,000 people have already been displaced from that area. It's been using phosphorus bombs. It's bombed quite to the interior, I mean, around 40 kilometers away from the border. And Hezbollah has not really responded. When it comes to Iran, they have a lot of tools at their disposal. I mean, Iran doesn't need to get into the fray directly. As your guest pointed out earlier, this has been a shadow war that's been ongoing between Israel and Iran for quite some time. So they've got quite a lot of regional tools at their disposals. An increase of attacks from the Houthis. We've seen increasing attacks against American bases in Syria and Iraq. So we may also see some sort of an increase in attacks in these places, not directly from Lebanon. A third thing we might see also is that Hassan Nasrallah from the beginning has said that this is a Palestinian-led conflict. The person who was killed yesterday, the main target, was a Palestinian Hamas leader. So he may say, we're going to take our cue from the Palestinians and wait to see what they want, and then we will be there to support them, because they were the direct target and not us in that sense. So there are different ways this can play out. We have to wait and see. But I still believe that they will do what they need to do to kind of at least stave off any kind of a regional conflict or an escalation in the conflict beyond something that is, at least until now, has been manageable. But it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, let me put this to you, because it's an important point in all of this. I have heard voice around the region, and I'm going to remind our viewers that I'm normally based in Abu Dhabi with the Middle East CNN's Middle East programming hub there, and work around the region a lot. We talk to an awful lot of sources around the region all the time, and I've heard voice around the region accusing Israel of trying to draw Iran into this conflict. I mean, we heard from the Defence Minister Yoav Gallant recently, who said we are fighting this conflict on 7 fronts. We have addressed 6, and he was speaking there to Lebanon, to Syria, to Iraq, to Yemen, to Gaza, making the point, without actually naming Iran, that Iran was the only front that they hadn't actually physically gone after. Now, the Biden administration, the staunch ally of the Israelis at present, has warned Iran in no uncertain terms not to get involved in this conflict. Do you see evidence that Israel is trying to draw Iran in, and/or evidence that Benjamin Netanyahu, and again, this is talk around the region, Benjamin Netanyahu is intent to a certain extent in widening this conflict, in not seeing an end to it anytime soon? What do you make of that?
Benjamin Netanyahu is fighting for his political survival. His approval rating today in Israel, once this conflict ends, I think is something like 15%. They support him staying there, but once the conflict ends, only 15% want to see him in power. So he has a real stake in extending the conflict as much as he can. And that's part of the challenge today. I do believe that Israel has been trying, at least based on the evidence that we've seen so far, has been trying to drag Hezbollah more into a conflict, and Iran via Hezbollah. Goading them more and more into a conflict. They have exhibited some restraint, for better or worse. But I think also in the process there, I mean, in the same way that the concern with dragging Hezbollah and Iran into a conflict, there's been concern with Israel trying to drag the US into the conflict as well, because should rockets start raining on Tel Aviv or on Israel, the US is not going to stand by and watch this happen without getting involved. And I think that's another major concern in the region. So now we're counting today on the hope that the American administration, along maybe with some European countries, including France, can exercise their influence with the Israelis not to escalate any further, while other regional countries work with the Iranians to to dampen things down and dampen whatever response is going to come in, whether it's Qatar, Turkey, and others. I
was confident that you would be an excellent guest for us this hour as this news breaks out of Iran. Your insight and analysis so important as we pick through what is an incredibly busy, volatile, and frankly, extremely worrying time. And as I thank you, I'm being told that the death toll in Iran has now risen to 103. Thank you, Maha.